and welcome back to another episode of Exploring Standards. Today, I'm very excited to have Rob Hall as a guest on the podcast. Rob is the CEO of Tempo Audits. Rob, how are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you very much for joining me. So, before we do get any further into this podcast, I will make a little disclaimer and state that Assent is an independent consultancy firm, and we do not recommend any certification body. But moving on from that, our topic today is disrupting ISO 27001 certification bodies and auditing remotely. But before we get into those questions and into that, Rob, can you tell us, our listeners, a little bit more about Tempo Audits?
Cool. Yeah. So I'm Rob. I'm CEO of Tempo Audits, and we're a new breed of certification body. We're focused entirely on ISO 27001, and I created it to try and simplify the certification experience for modern tech-based companies. So, I'm from a tech founder background myself. I spent 8 years founding a tech business in the food and drink and hospitality space. And then I joined a ISO 27001 automation platform where part of my role was to build relationships with certification bodies to send our customers. And I was surprised to see how old school the certification body market was in terms of working with tech companies and automation platforms. So sort of slow to produce quotes, slow to produce certificates. Auditors who didn't quite understand how modern tech companies work and the tech stack they use in automation platforms. So Tempo Audits was created to try and solve that problem and create a sort of a modern experience for tech companies. So we are InfoSec focused. We understand tech. We try and strip back the formalities and the communication to sort of better respond to these sort of small tech-based companies. Try and find collaborative auditors. Work as fast as tech companies want to work, and then I will manage all the communication and customer service to make a sort of modern experience. So yeah, that's Tempo.
That's fantastic. I think it's really exciting. As you said, it can be quite old school in this industry, and to doing this, I think, especially tech companies, is going to be fantastic. So I think you kind of dived into this a little bit, but if you want to go a little bit deeper, tell us a bit how Tempo is different from other certification bodies.
Yeah, so I think the certification body market is relatively old school, as we've mentioned. There are some really good certification bodies out there, so I'm not going to sort of label everyone at the same time. But I think where we differentiate, and part of this is just to be in terms of like size and being really agile, but also a mindset of coming into the market with a new approach. But I think some of the market can be very slow to move, whether in terms of producing quotes or the certificates at the end, or in terms of responding to customer service. We're definitely winning customers over who seem to be fed up with sort of slow moving nature of the sort of industry. And then finding auditors. It's difficult to find auditors, and that's why it could be problematic. But we are picking out really good, so fresh thinking auditors who understand tech and come in with a new approach, and particularly around understanding automation platforms.
Mm.
And then I guess the final point is, I guess the key one is also coming into market and being well priced. So we're very sort of competitive to serve our sort of SME tech audience.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. And I couldn't agree more about the auditors. Sometimes it can be tricky to get auditors to agree to dates and stuff like that, and it can be quite slow moving. So I think that's definitely a competitive edge that you guys have got there. Now, one thing you did mention was something you're going to is remote audits, and that's where you're based. That is what you're all about. So can you tell us a bit more about that, specifically how you're able to do remote audits when other CVs don't?
Yeah, it's an interesting area, remote audits, because from my experience at the automation platform I used to work, some certification bodies had got comfortable with the idea of remote audits and were delivering them regularly, but a lot weren't. And they were very sort of old school in requiring companies sort of fully remote to sort of hire an office to come and deliver their audit, which has a whole load of sort of negative connotations in terms of cost and just sort of ease of arranging it. But ISO 27006, which is the guidelines for arranging ISMS audits, has made this much clearer. So effectively, a certification body can do this if they conduct a risk analysis that covers some of the key points covered in ISO 27006. Now, because we are a new certification body, we've come to market post this coming into practice. So we've sort of built our whole proposition around delivering remote audits, which means it's in our DNA. So provided we conduct the remote audit risk assessment and prove that those risks can be covered, which for the majority of our tech customers or clients works fine. So there's
Mhm.
typically a few risk factors we need to cover off. Things like, is there no sort of critical on-premises infrastructure? Is the sort of the scope of the work mainly administrative? So obviously, if you're writing software, you're not there running a factory or anything.
No, yeah.
In which case, we can tick off those requirements and deliver a fully remote audit. So I think it's just about coming to market, so understanding what we wanted to achieve and building a system that made sure that we could do it sensibly.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What are these benefits then of going in fully remote audits?
Well, I mean, I guess the first one is saving companies that are fully remote from having to sort of hire a space to deliver an audit, or if they're hybrid, saving them
Mhm.
from sort of from a convenience point of view, having to sort of come in to the office for days when they wouldn't be there to sort of deliver a sort of full week audit, when people would practically be coming in remote or hybrid. So it's much easier to be able to jump on video links and deliver that.
Yeah.
Obviously, then there's the cost benefit, because while
Mhm.
certification bodies might not charge for remote audits explicitly, there is an implicit cost of travel accommodation for auditors that will have to get passed on in some way. So it definitely helps to keep the cost down if we can do it. I mean, finally, I guess there is a point from the certification body and auditor side. It's easier to find good auditors with a bigger pool if you remove the geographic limitations. So it means that we can get good auditors on and maintain
Mhm.
them, which obviously is then passed on to customers in terms of having good auditors available as well.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You're thinking about that geographical sort of barrier that other certification body has. You guys don't have that, and that gives you lots of benefits. That's fantastic. Can you talk us through how remote certifications are done?
Yeah, I mean, on that point, it's not sort of rocket science. It's effectively the same process.
Mhm.
The stage one and the stage two for certification audits will be delivered fully remotely. And exactly in the same way, we will share the video links, the customers will get on, and we'll go through the evidence in exactly the same way on screen. And
Mhm.
realistically, for a sort of physical audit, the process is exactly the same. I mean, I've just been at our UCAS assessment, and we're sitting next to the UCAS assessor and just showing them everything on the screen as if it was a remote audit, but we've had to do it in person.
Yeah.
And so effectively, we're doing the same thing just through a video link. We're going through clause by clause. The customer is displaying the evidence for each clause, for each
Mhm.
control. We're gathering that evidence, we're filling out a report so that we can sort of paint the picture of compliance,
Mhm.
where there isn't compliance, non-compliance, in exactly the same way. Um, uh, and the auditor will share the audit plan in advance and communicate who needs to be on the call at various times. We'll obviously build in a bit of flexibility because um, the plan might change. People are working from home often. Yes, the
Yeah.
postman might ring on the door. Those sort of things you have to sort of bake into it.
Yeah.
But you can also say, right, someone from HR needs to join to go through the people controls for this next section. So there's a bit of flexibility, but it's exactly the same as a physical audit, just delivered through a screen instead of in person.
And I think actually that flexibility is surely that's a benefit because things come up, don't they? Even if it isn't the postman in any respect, things come up, and sometimes having that flexibility is probably a benefit for your organisation that you're working with.
Oh yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think also because we're trying to be sort of modern and flexible, and to a certain extent, I've cut back some of the formalities to keep it relaxed in our approach.
Mhm.
It goes nicely with being flexible. So I encourage all my auditors to be very flexible on, if the auditors are flagging, if maybe they need a break, maybe just bake in a lot of flexibility in the plan to adapt to what's happening.
I imagine that makes it as well a lot less scary because I think sometimes certification for organizations can seem a bit like, oh, and those audits, and having that approach
Yeah,
probably makes it a bit more friendly and a bit more approachable. Yeah.
100%. That really keen for that to be the message. I sort of say to customers as well. We don't. I mean, I'm trying to move that old element of feeling like you're being interviewed by the
Assessed.
police. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? You've got some non-conformity, so we're gonna have to take you to prison. Like that's not the message. The message is you've got some conformities.
Yeah.
If you correct these, then we can go ahead and issue certification. And the difference is just how quickly you can get through the corrective actions and achieve your goals, and we can work with you on that.
I love that, and I can see how your customers would love that as well because it shouldn't be a scary or horrible thing that they're going through. They're
Yeah,
trying to improve their organization. So yeah,
yeah,
fantastic.
exactly.
Right. So finally, any tips for organizations who are preparing for remote audits for certification?
I mean, I think the key is to prepare exactly how you would for a physical audit. We're going to go through the evidence in exactly the same way. Actually, I should say the only difference is that there might be a couple of hours going through, or an hour and a half to look at some physical controls via camera if that's necessary. But prepare in exactly the same way. Get all your evidence in a row. The auditor will share the audit plan in advance, so you sort of know what to expect.
Mhm.
But I think I guess my message is to try and sort of take away the fear from it and just arrive prepared to show all your evidence, to paint the picture, which is what we want to do from the sort of our perspective is to the extent possible show conformity so that we can go ahead and issue the certificate. So yeah, I don't think it should be a fearful point at all.
Fantastic. Thank you. I love your ethos, and I love the kind of the forward thinking that you guys have got going on, which is fantastic. So thank you. So thank you, Rob, for joining me on today's episode of Exploring Standards. It has been an absolute pleasure. I will pop a link in the show description for our listeners to find out more about Tempo Audits, put the website on. You can also connect with Rob on LinkedIn, and I'll put a link on there for you guys to find Rob as well. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you have enjoyed it, please make sure you rate, review, and subscribe. It really, really helps the podcast. And I'll be back with another episode in a couple of weeks.